The Brew House was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee Brewery. But the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewHouse.com. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the mighty Genesee Brew House. Nice to have Carl Falk back, voice of sports in the afternoon radio. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Mike Catalana, co-hosting.
Good to be here.
Pat Duffy. How many of these things do you have?
Over 1,000, I told you. In honor of Mike Catalana and a man who may have played his last NFL game this past weekend, former Buffalo Bills free agent tight end and potentially Hall of Fame tackle, Jason Peters.
Oh, nice.
Do we think he was a Hall of Famer when he left?
Well, he had potential to be really good. Obviously, they got a number one pick, which ended up being
Eric Wood.
So it ended up a well-used draft pick. Peters will be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he's first ballot. It's tough for those tackles sometimes. There's been some really good ones. I think he will be. But definitely his career blossomed in the NFL. The interesting thing is, even though the Eagles have had that success, he's only played in one playoff winning game, and that was that game against Chicago. It was the only playoff game he won with the Eagles.
Carl, 2 big playoff games this week in the NFL. Take your pick. Which one do you find the most enticing?
You got to go with the Patriots, Casey. With the weather factor, you've got the young kid who's likely to win the MVP, the greatest of all time in Brady. It seems like all of America is buying Kansas City Chiefs jerseys this weekend because we all want Brady and Belichick to go down.
Not all of us.
The reality is, we said this last week about San Diego. The Chargers were going to give them the game. We saw a better roster, a better talent. They just beat Baltimore in a way we didn't think they would be beaten. They're going to New England. They'll shut him down. What's Brady do? He plays the best game he's had all year. And Sony Michel is becoming a real weapon for the Patriots offense.
What do you think of the line, which essentially says these teams are equal?
I think they're trying to entice people to bet on the Patriots a little bit. I think a lot of people in the playoffs go home team exclusively, and I think this is one of those, got to even it up if you're Vegas.
And the other part of that is people like to bet for who they want to root for, and you're the only person that I know of that's rooting for the Patriots coming up in this game.
Of all the people you know.
Everybody in the world. I do think everybody overreacts a little bit to the Patriots, and I'll say I think there's a little bit of an overreaction to how they played last week, and they were incredibly efficient. They had 2 weeks off. When Belichick has that against a team, look, you could argue that as they should have stayed east. I said after the way they played, they should have just stayed out west and not even shown up. They were terrible in the game. They looked poorly coached. I wonder what they were looking at. You know what New England's going to do offensively, and they let Brady do whatever he wanted in that game. But I'm not going to overreact to say that makes everything perfect and great. This will be a real test for them against a team with speed, a team that can score, and the game is not in Foxborough, and they don't have the additional week. Mahomes is the difference maker, right? Andy Reid's playoff teams, to me, watching them with the Eagles, have always played tight and anxious. That's what Andy brings, and it was the flaw. They never played at their level or above their level. I think Mahomes can change that for him. He's got to get off to a good start. If he does, I think the Patriots could be in a lot of trouble.
But that, Mikey, is the problem, getting off to a good start. Belichick has seen this team this season, the Patriots, 43-41 game in Foxborough. I don't think it's anywhere as high a score this next time around because, one, Belichick's going to find a way to not shut down Mahomes, but temper Mahomes. Exactly what you said is what the Patriots know they have to do. If you can stop him early, at least make him question where he's going to put that ball, you're going to have problems all day. And the running game for Kansas City is not what it was a couple of weeks ago because we know what happened. That being said, the Patriots' run defense, that's their weakness on defense, right? I think that this will be, against all other predictions, a low-scoring AFC Championship game that comes down to one play and not a play that's made by either offense. Write it down.
Without any mention of the weather, which isn't going to help.
Well, I mean, it's Foxborough, though. Like, you know, the Patriots, if this was the Saints going out into Kansas City, that's one thing. But they played in Foxborough all the time like this.
But it is different for them. When they're at home, there is that level of confidence and security, and that's when they don't lose. We have seen them lose. We've seen them lose certainly going to Denver in cold weather against a team that maybe they weren't better than. and they end up losing that game. It can happen.
We have the other game.
Yeah, Rams going to New Orleans. This one should be very good as well. A little bit different in this one, but you still got the young quarterback against the old quarterback, the Hall of Famer against the number 1 overall pick. But to me, this game comes back to the running game. Does Todd Gurley finally do what he's been doing all year, or do they rely on C.J. Anderson again to supplement him? And Kamara and Ingram, a great pair of running backs for New Orleans. I don't think it's about the quarterbacks in that one. I think it's about the running backs.
Of the 4 teams that are left, who wins the whole thing?
I think it's going to be the Rams. I really do. I think their defensive talent is finally playing to its potential.
Interesting game in that one. I think if you're McVay, you came out and ran the ball down the Cowboys' throat. I think he changes it up this week. I think they're throwing it around the field this week. I think they're going to take the Saints expecting more of the run and throw the ball more. I think they have a shot. I don't know if I trust them on the road, but I'm going to say overall, I'm just going to say it because it's what I would like to see. Big Red and the Chiefs get the championship.
Saints win it all. Drew Brees marches off into the sunset with that trophy over his head. Done. Write it down.
This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genny Brew House. We'll talk a little bit about the Buffalo Bills next. The Press Box is brought to you in part by Bay & Goodman Pizza, a local Rochester favorite. Corner of North Winton and Browncroft, Bay & Goodman Pizza. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us on the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genny Brew House. This isn't a week where there's a whole lot of news about the Buffalo Bills, but it strikes me with all the coaches that got hired. I go back to Brian Daboll, and I wonder, is he up to the task of bringing the Bills up to the point where all these other teams that are hiring young offensive-minded coaches think they ought to be?
That's an interesting point, because we talked about it internally at my station, and we were talking about, I wonder when Daboll will get his name out there. You know, he needs a really good year from Josh Allen and all that. And you look at his years of experience and his resume, and you see the guys who are getting hired ahead of him. Because I guess he doesn't fit that criteria of really young, really cool, and he has more of a beard like closer to yours than the
really cool beard.
Than the scruff beard. Awesome. It seems to be what works for guys. Yeah, he absolutely has the resume to do it. Helping a quarterback move along will be another thing. I'm going to be very curious to see how some of these guys work out. Because to this point, Sean McVay's been really good, but he has a playoff win in 2 years, and let's see what he does this weekend. It's not like he has a series of championships when you look at the other coaches. So, everybody has gone down that train, but I think Daboll has the ability to do that, but maybe because he's 5 years too old, 10 years too old, whatever the number is, he's not getting the opportunity.
And he was a little handicapped this past year to really show what he's capable of, because the team couldn't do anything.
No, I agree with you. I mean, when it comes to the coaching, you know how critical I've been of the coaching. The one thing I did enjoy was how the offense looked when it looked like Daboll was able to get his hands and do what he wanted. When they were playing with a lead, when they were playing early in the game and it looks like the plays were scripted, things were really interesting. New England sticks out in my head, even though it wasn't as successful, the things they were trying to do, knowing they had to do it to win. It's an interesting catch-22. Because you want Josh Allen to take steps forward and this offense to look great and the team to have consistency. But the better the team looks, the more likely it is that this guy that got Josh Allen to this point is going to be gone. And then you have a third-year quarterback having to learn a new system under a new guy. So I don't really know what I'm supposed to hope for this season.
You hope for Allen to be better, but this is where we talk about a defensive head coach hiring an offensive guy. To Pat's point, when he has success, you're going to lose that guy. And that's what ends up happening. But believe me, they'll take a great year out of Josh Allen and then deal with it from that point on if that's what it takes to lose Daboll.
Carl, when you take a look at the Final Four, how far off do you see the Bills from becoming one of those teams?
Miles, thousands of miles, a long way. Think about the offensive side of the ball. We're talking about Brian Daboll. They arguably need 4 new offensive linemen this year, and the one who's staying probably needs to be repositioned. So it's a complete rebuild on the offensive line. They need a tight end. They need a wide receiver. They need a running back. And we haven't even talked about the defense. There is so much work to be done on the offensive side of the ball. And I think it's cautionary with all the money they have under the cap. Find me the team that went into free agency, spent a ton of money, and changed their fortunes. Some teams have had a little bit of a short-term gain, but free agency in the NFL is more of a plug system. You got a hole, you can plug it through free agency. You don't rebuild through free agency.
Very good. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genny Brew House. Like It or Not is next. Here's the Press Box Trivia question, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390.
Today is all about belief. Right? It's not enough for me to believe it. It's not enough for Coach Hill or Coach Barstrom to believe it. You have to be the ones that believe that you are capable of running the way that we all know you are capable of, and that those negative thoughts that are coming into your head, you can acknowledge and push away. What's your response to them going to be? 5 more meters, 5 more meters, 5 more meters.
Here's the Press Box Trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us on the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genny Brew House. Like it or not, recently at least, the Buffalo Sabres have kind of turned the wrong corner.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I figured out the problem, and it's not anything that's fixable this year. It's the head coach. It's Phil Housley. He's the problem. All right, you go on this 10-game win streak, and I know that those wins were unsustainable, but it showed that you have the firepower on this team to compete with the best teams in the league. As a matter of fact, last weekend against Tampa Bay, you lose the game under crazy penalty circumstances, but for all but the last 5 minutes, you competed. Phil Housley has serious matchup problems. He does not know how to manage his lines. He doesn't know how to manage playing against the other team's top lines. If you notice, I'm going to get deep hockey for you real quick. You ready? The Sabres' second period on the road have been atrocious. They're nightmares. And it's because the Sabres have the long change in the second period. Phil Housley is not ready to change his players to match up with the guys on the road that are tearing them apart. Look at that Edmonton game last weekend. Oh my gosh. What a horrible night it was. Zach Kassian has 2 goals in the first 5 minutes because you can't manage your lines. It's Housley, and I think with Quenneville available and Chris Taylor sitting at Rochester, if I'm the GM, I'm thinking about making a move. I know they're not going to do it, but you have 2 really good options there that I would like to see manage the lines a little bit better.
Are they still a playoff team?
I mean, they have a chance. I mean, they're going to stay in contention.
What a lukewarm take. I hope everyone goes out and has a good time. They have a chance.
I say they have a chance. The 10-game winning streak kept them in the running. We talked about what's the benefit of it? 20 points.
Sure.
Because it kept them in the running. They don't look like a playoff team. And you can tell coaching all you want, and there is definitely validity to some of the things he has and hasn't done. But that Edmonton game alone was just an example of a team not ready to play. Given the puck away at multiple times.
But that comes down to coaching.
Okay.
That is coaching.
Or players.
Okay, Mike, the bottom 9 is a tire fire.
Ristolainen starts off the second period by looking like you on the ice, tripping twice.
He was sexy?
Carl, like it or not, the perfect storm that was the Syracuse win at Duke last week.
You have to love it. If you're a Syracuse fan, it doesn't matter who wasn't there. It doesn't matter who got hurt. All that matters is the Orange went down to Durham and beat Duke. Zion Williamson is a beast, and we're going to watch him in the NBA for a dozen years. R.J. Barrett's going to be an NBA player. Nobody cares about that. Tyus Battle played his best game of his last year at Syracuse. Frank Howard looked like a guy who played last year. They had a 75-foot shot at the end of the half. Everything happened perfectly for them. But come March, that win is going to probably be the thing that gets them into the tournament.
Yeah, that's the tangible thing. But everything he said, and they still needed overtime.
Well, they did, but the end of that was they won. So on paper, it is a win. Nobody's going to talk about that when the committee looks at it for the vote. And we've talked about this before. That was the first time, and maybe it's because they were scoring and it was that type of atmosphere, that team looked like they were enjoying themselves and playing a little freer. And when Battle plays like that, they are a legitimate team. And to your point on Howard, he makes a huge difference for them. And Chuku, where did that come from?
Player of the game.
No kidding.
18 rebounds, 10 points.
Those are crazy.
That was
Is
great.
it sustainable for Syracuse now?
Well,
can they take something out of this and run?
tournament, maybe. They can. They've got winnable games coming up.
It is winnable games. I think they're still going to be the same team. I think when they're good, they can beat or compete with these better teams. I think we're going to be sitting there on Selection Sunday, and they're going to be on the bubble again. As what they've been. But that win is going to be the difference, and they will get in the tournament.
Oh!
How about that?
Hot takes, Mikey.
We are the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genny Brew House. Unfinished Business is next. And now here's this week's MVP Experience Stat of the Week, brought to you by Sport Clips, where it's good to be a guy. No appointment ever needed.
And now to Eichel. He floated one. Score!
2 reps, $2. Now we're out up to
Dunkin' Go-Tos, a great deal for $2, $4, or $5. America runs on Dunkin'.
Welcome back. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genny Brew House. Unfinished Business, brought to you by Dunkin'. America runs on Dunkin'. Pat.
We were just talking about Syracuse's crazy win over #1 Duke in Duke last week, and it made me realize something. Jim Boeheim is arguably one of the greatest coaches in NCAA history when he wants to be. That win against Duke made me think back to all of the games I enjoyed watching Syracuse basketball as a kid, and I realized something. Every year, Syracuse has these crazy wins in big games that you don't expect because they proceed to let you down in a bunch of games that they should absolutely win throughout the regular season. You have crazy runs in the Big East tournament to make the tournament when they shouldn't with Jerry McNamara. You have losses against Memphis opening night, the year that they win the national championship with Melo. Is Jim Boeheim a really good coach when he wants to be a really good coach? Because for all of the massive wins that I can remember, I also remember terribly disappointing losses. Like this team that beat Duke in Duke lost to Old Dominion. Old Dominion. I think that the better Boeheim does in big games, the more it makes me realize maybe he's not up to coach every single night. Am I wrong?
Maybe.
Maybe it makes sense. Do you get what I'm saying? Do you understand?
But he's also, the way Boeheim is, he tries to establish something with his team. And you get the downside sometimes, where Chuku sticks him on the bench for an entire game. This is what he does. He's always been that way.
18 to 22-year-old boys have ups and downs.
Okay.
You have an older man who's trying to keep them even. It doesn't happen.
Just find me a coach that has had more peaks and valleys throughout entire seasons. Like Krzyzewski doesn't really have that. I don't remember Knight having that. I don't remember the peaks and valleys.
Bobby Knight would have choked guys out if that ever happened.
And there's a difference. Krzyzewski has a bench full of All-Americans, too. I mean, they recruit at a different level there. So maybe it's a little different.
Maybe it makes the tournament.
Carl.
I alluded to this earlier. Free agency in the NFL is a cautionary tale. The Bills go into this offseason with a ton of needs. They have a ton of money. They have a ton of draft picks. Everything's going to be all fixed by next year, right? Not so fast. If you look back at the history of the NFL and the history of free agency, teams have gone all in. The Washington Redskins, Dan Snyder, never found an overpriced old player that he didn't love and wasn't willing to sign. When's the last time the Redskins were in the Super Bowl? Even the New York Giants on defense a few years ago, they brought in Landon Collins, Olivier Vernon, spent a ton of money. How is their defense this year? All those guys are still there. And the contracts, they're still there too. The Bills can add through free agency. They can plug a few holes. But realistically, free agency is not going to change the Buffalo Bills for 2019.
I'm wondering if you could make the case for last year's Eagles, though.
They added pieces that were parts of the big picture. Remember, they had a lot of things in place. Jason Peters on that offensive line, Lane Johnson. Adding a small piece here and there, you can do.
Speaking of the Eagles, I got to start with saying this. I love Nick Foles. And for what Nick Foles did for the Eagles, every Eagles fan will always remember him, and he'll probably, like Rocky, have a statue in Philly someday. But they made the right move. They're moving on to Carson Wentz. Look, Nick Foles can still play. He can win, and he found something special in Philly. But with Carson Wentz, they're not just talking about next year, the year after, the year after. You're looking at the next 5 to 10 plus years. They think he can be the franchise quarterback. Nick Foles was special last year in the playoffs. This year when he came in, he was good, but he also had some other Nick Foles moments, and I'm not counting the last interception of the game. Foles will move on, and he's going to find the right place. He doesn't want to go to a place like Washington that's a dumpster fire or a place like Jacksonville. If the Giants were smart, they would go after him. But he needs structure. He needs to find a place where he's got the right head coach, and he can succeed. But for the Eagles, there's no question. Carson Wentz is the future.
Yeah, why would you want to win football
Why not
games?
keep both?
He can't keep both. It won't work. It won't work by the contract, and Foles can buy his way into free agency, which is what he will want to do. He will find his next spot. Likely won't be a trade. It'll be a free agency. I just hope for Foles that he finds the right place, because there aren't really as many openings as people think.
This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genny Brew House. Unfinished Business brought to you by Duncan. America runs on Duncan. Carl, good to see you again.
Always a pleasure.
Let's
Thanks
do
for
this
having
again
me.
soon.
Absolutely.
Guys, as always, thank
Maybe.
you.
Possibly. It's possible.
Sabres.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week for the Rochester Press Box.